Check one, check one. This is a test of the webinar. Checking our audio.
You sound really good. Make sure that I'm hearing myself. Make sure.
Good morning. This is Ed Correa. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. Sydney, I see that you're in the audience out there. Would you mind typing in the question window if you can hear me all right? While I wait for that, and in fact, anybody, oh, she can hear me. Good, super. Okay, so thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is the myths of managed IT services. And I hope you enjoy this. Information technology has become the lifeblood of most businesses today. It's required not only to conduct business, to store your data, to connect your business to the internet and cloud resources, but it's also required to protect you from attacks. And these attacks have unfortunately become ubiquitous. And you must be resilient enough to stand key system failures and ensure that normal business operations happen no matter what. So a lot of the things that I'm going to share today are with that in mind. It's how should your IT be managed? What are some of the dirty secrets that you might not be aware of in my industry? And I hope you derive some great value from this. There we go. So first, a little bit about myself. I'm Ed Correa. I am the founder, president, and CEO of Sagacent Technologies. Sagacent is a local Silicon Valley, what I like to call managed service IT firm. We manage rather than react to exclusively IT stuff. So we manage all aspects of the resiliency, reliability, security, compliance issues for businesses here in Silicon Valley, and we serve exclusively businesses. I've been in IT, it's hard to believe, this is my 41st year. I'm starting to feel very old. And it's been 18 plus years since Sagacent's founding. We're about halfway through our 18th year, and I'm looking forward to Jan 1 when we turn 19 officially. My company, Sagacent Technologies, actually myself, I've been awarded and recognized in the industry a few times. Most notably, I received the Channel Pro 2020 Visionary Awards in 2016 and 2015. I was also named to the MSP Mentor Top 250 People in the IT Industry in 2016, 15, 14, and 13. My company, Sagacent Technologies, has done quite well. In fact, we just got recognized again. We were recognized as being one of the top 501 managed service providers on the planet. In the prior 5 years, 2017, 16, 15, 14, and 13, and just this week I got notification that we were also honored again in 2018. So we are not only made it to the top 501 MSP list on the planet, for the prior 5 years, but now we've made it 6 years in a row, as well as the MSP Mentor list for the top 100 managed service providers on the planet with less than 10 employees. I don't think we're going to keep getting that one much longer because we are going to grow beyond that by the end of this year. Anyway, kind of fun. And it tells you a little bit about the person who's going to be giving you advice and recommendations. Today, our agenda is to cover, well, I love my sticker here, busting the myths. We want to explain some things that a lot of people don't understand. We're going to start off with a definition around what is IT management. We're going to talk about the big 3 myths in my industry about the person, perfection, and security. We're going to give you some tips for solving your IT computer problems, and we'll address Q&A questions. I'm here for you throughout this webinar. I really want to make sure that you get real value from spending your time with me here. So please feel free, in the GoToMeeting web app there. Put in your questions throughout the event. I have people working with me on this, and they will feed me questions at the end. But get your questions in as I say things so that you don't have to try and remember them at the end when we go into the Q&A session. Okay? First, IT management versus managed services. Well, IT management is really the discipline whereby all your information technology and gadgets and resources are going to be managed in accordance with your needs and priorities. The resources that you put in charge of this need to understand that they're going to be managing the tangible investments that a company makes in computers, hardware, software, data, data facilities, and increasingly the cloud. Unfortunately, most companies without active IT supervisors, and by active I mean a person who's really looking over the shoulder of the IT people, most IT people tend to shift into a reactive mode. They're only addressing what's burning, what's on fire, what's broken, the things that people are complaining about. And they stop looking at things along the terms of best practice and what should we do differently. Managed services, on the other hand, is the practice of typically outsourcing that need, that management of your IT. Managed services, if it's done correctly, is typically done on a proactive, preventative maintenance basis of we're looking at the systems, the functions, and we're taking a very strategic look at how can we improve the operations of the business while ideally cutting expenses. I'll add a little bit. In my case, we rarely cut the IT cost itself, IT management cost, but we actually end up cutting a lot of other expenses. I was meeting with a client just yesterday. We were able to cut their internet and phone expenses in half. And I think by the time we're all done with it, they'll probably save 60%. So the goal in my mind with managed services is not just to get it on the cheap, because you often get what you pay for, but to look for a company that's going to give you an alternative to the break fix reactive mindset, and come in and really manage things strategically. So that's a difference on those two. So the first myth in my industry is our IT guy has us covered. And much like the myth of Atlas supporting the world upon his back, we put unrealistic expectations upon these IT people, and maybe we tell them or we don't, but we expect, number one, that they're going to know all they need to know. In truth, most technical people aren't all that technical at all. They look technical, they look knowledgeable because the people who are talking to them typically are less knowledgeable or experienced. And the big mistake there is that they assume, well, since you know more than me, you must know all it is that you need to know in order to take care of my business. In reality, most IT people I run into, close to 90%, they're tinkerers. They're users of technology. They are more knowledgeable than the typical person, but just because you can build a gaming system or a home network does not mean that you understand what it means to take care of a business. Relatedly, people make the assumption that we're well trained. Unfortunately, the IT industry is not regulated. There are no certifications or training that is ubiquitous to all of us. Those of us that pursue that kind of training and education, it's out there, but I tend to find that most people don't address it in a professional manner, and the very vast majority of people in this industry are not well trained at all. And so we'll see business owners that will hire an individual because they know something about IT, but is it what they need to know to manage that company? Nothing changes faster than IT. the IT industry changes significantly every 3 years. And if an IT person isn't continuously investing in themselves, learning new things, they will be woefully out of date within 5 years. And no one can know it all. Knowledge becomes very stale in this industry, so people have to invest in themselves. Item B here on my list, the belief that this person has done all that they need, all that needs doing. And what I'm referring to here is in the care and management of a company's IT, the belief is, well, that person's doing everything that needs to be doing because they know their stuff. In reality, we do audits, typically a couple a month. And we're, like I said, in the middle of our 19th year. And so we've done hundreds of audits over the years. In reality, we find major problems at most businesses we audit. The typical company patches are not done consistently, if at all. Very, very poor security, if at all. Incomplete data backups. In fact, very often we'll see that there's a backup system in place. It's just not running, or it is running and it's not backing up all the important data. And the final item under item B is there almost always is no documentation of the environment, and documentation about how the plumbing is how is everything connected, how's it plumbed, how's it working. Today we have so many resources that are in the cloud. Who's the vendor? What are the passwords to get access to that vendor? We have to make the assumption that other people are going to come in to take care of the IT, so you have to have that documentation there to facilitate them coming in. But what happens, I call this the bus rule, if this IT person gets hit by a bus, and what do? As we take over other companies and take care of their IT, the vast majority of time, there is no documentation at all. And no one knows how things are put together. Too often, even the IT person himself or herself doesn't know how things are put together, and they can't articulate to us, where are the keys to the kingdom? Why is this set up this way? That's a real major vulnerability to a business. Item C, the myth or belief that we're okay if that person goes on vacation, gets sick, or quits. In reality, that's a very dangerous belief. We get calls all the time, and it seems Murphy's Law, problems happen when this person goes on vacation, gets sick, or quits. And it's very common that we get calls about this, and then we ask to see the documentation. There is none. You've got to have a backup person who's very knowledgeable about this environment. We have a number of clients where we are that backup person. The company brought us in to look at things before they needed us, just in case. That's a really good idea. The last word, quits. I want to tell you a story. Well, let's go into item D, the belief that the person loves us and would never hurt us. The story is of William. William was a much loved employee at a company. And when William turned in his 2 weeks notice, no one thought anything bad of it. Oh, no problem. William, we wish you the best, and you're going to go on and do great things. And when William left, we were called in to do the due diligence of backing up his files and changing the email access and changing the passwords, the kind of things you do anytime any employee leaves. What turns out to be the case is that William had deleted all his data, because when my techs were trying to back up his data, they called me shortly after that and said, Ed, there's no data here. What do you mean there's no data there? You must be doing something wrong. This is William you're talking about. William had deleted all his email and all data in folders for anything he'd ever done. We decided to go to the backups so we could do a restore of William's data. It turned out that William, a week before he left, had gone in and removed himself and his systems from any backups. He was clearly trying to hide something, but this was a much loved employee. There's a lesson here. Companies often suspect different employees might do bad things, and they'll call us in and ask us to do special backups or monitor the individuals and this and that. But it's often the people that you think you can trust the most that are in the position to hurt you the most. They can really do damage to a company. You've got to have really good systems in place. Long story short on this story is I'm very paranoid, and so I'd asked for backups of backups. And so we were able to find all that data and restore it. The phrase is only the paranoid survive, and in this case, that was a good thing. But let this be a lesson to anybody. You've got to have good systems in place, and frankly, you've got to protect yourself with the assumption that anyone knowingly or unknowingly could damage the company. So that's our myth number one. Myth number two, the belief in perfection. Our data, our systems, our backups, everything's perfect. And I go in and I talk to businesses all the time, and they're telling me how, my IT guy says this is in place, so it must be great. No one's ever taken a second look at things. In reality, perfection is an illusion. It's a nice goal. We want to pursue it, but it's never really attainable. If your business, your data, your security relies on perfection, you must attain perfection for things to succeed, you're going to be very disappointed. In reality, we have to assume that there are always going to be problems. Things will break. And what are we going to do to make sure that if something does break, we're aware of it, we see it, and that we can get back from it? When we do our audits, we almost always find big errors. Frankly, most of them are not intentional. They were just errors. They were errors in judgment. But the fact that no one knew that those errors were there, no one was able to take appropriate steps. When it was made clear that the company didn't want to spend money on things, most IT companies or individuals will cut corners. And if you tell your IT people, you know what, we don't want to spend a lot on this, most IT people will do that. They will cut costs. They may cut costs beyond what is reasonable and present very unrealistic expectations for the company. An example of data backups, we need to understand what needs to be backed up and how quickly it has to be restored if we lose access to it. Most IT people I end up talking to have never had that conversation with management. And so not only do we have unrealistic expectations, they may have set up a backup that's cloud only, and that could take days for all the data to get back, when in reality that business needs data within minutes or hours at the longest. So we have to have conversations. Not knowing where the problems are can lead to major issues. Another story is of a 30-year-old project management company that we were called in to assist once they realized that they were in a real world of hurt. This company had an IT person for in excess of 10 years, and they liked him a great deal. And I found him to be fairly knowledgeable. Unfortunately, he built the IT environment for this company in the way he felt most comfortable. Anytime the company needed another system, he'd deploy another server. So this is a 30-year-old property management company, 3 locations, 54 employees, and they had 15 servers. I could not come up with a business case for them to have more than 4. In fact, if I was able to articulate or design things the way I wanted, they would go to less. But they had 15. The more pieces in the pie, or I like to say like gears in a watch, the more likely you're going to have a problem. Think of them as dominoes in a domino chain. Once one falls, they starts taking down everything. Years ago, this IT person had decided, you know what, we've got a lot of data here, a lot of servers, I'm going to have consolidated data. So we put in something that's called a SAN, storage area network. It's basically a big box with a lot of hard drives. So all those 15 servers were saving data on this one device. This is a best practice, but all systems must be managed, monitored, so that you have visibility to when things go wrong. This individual didn't. And evidently, sometime in the past, several drives went bad in the SAN. More time went by. More drives went bad in the SAN. I don't know why they were cascading and all these drives were dying, but they were, and he didn't see it. While this is going on, the data in the SAN, all those hard drives, is getting corrupted. And he's running backups reliably or religiously every night. But he repeats the backup process every 2 weeks, which means that he's overwriting the older backup data after a 2-week period. We were called in once they realized it appears that all our data is corrupt, and it appears that all our backups are corrupt. We need you to fix this. Unfortunately, by this case, or at this point in time, they've painted themselves in a corner, and there was nothing we could do. We could recommend how things should be set up for the future to guarantee that this won't happen again. But at that point, it was done. What you don't know can hurt you significantly. You've got to have visibility into what's going on. So this belief that perfection in all things and what we don't know about is fine is very, very dangerous. Myth number 3, we are secure. John Chambers, former CEO of Cisco, once said that there were 2 kinds of companies, those that knew that they've been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked. Security, well, frankly, business is a balance of convenience versus security. The ultimate in security is you put something in a safe and you drop it in the ocean and it goes down to the bottom where it's inaccessible. That's really secure. It's totally unusable, but it's very secure. And so the quest for security is this constant balance, this tug of war between how secure do we need to be and how much convenience or operations do we need. I run into businesses all the time who tell me, oh, we're totally safe because we have antivirus. Antivirus is not enough to stop everything. In fact, today, antivirus only stops about 35% on a good day of the attacks that are perpetrated upon a desktop or a laptop. Antivirus was designed decades ago to do a specific thing. And most antiviruses we run into today are still written to function in that old way, which doesn't work today. You need different technology. Happily, some antivirus products are coming out that have changed the way they operate, and those are functioning better. But the belief that with antivirus you're safe is a dangerous belief. Similarly, the belief that, well, we have a firewall, we're fine. I'm behind a good brand firewall, it'll protect all my data. Again, in reality, nearly all firewalls we see are not configured or managed. In my mind, there are 3 things necessary for any solution to function correctly. You need the correct or best product or solution to fit the need. It needs to be configured, installed, set up correctly, and it needs to be managed. Time and time again, the vast majority of companies we go in and look at their firewalls, they may or may not have a firewall, and if they do, it's almost always configured wrong, and almost always no one's looking at it on a regular basis such that if the company was attacked, they wouldn't know it. And certainly they wouldn't see that it's not protecting them. Very, very bad. The cloud, one of my favorite complaints. There's this belief out there that if I'm safe, I store all my data in the cloud, I'm safe. That's just not true. The cloud is another term for somebody else's computer. If you're using the cloud, your data is on somebody else's computer. More often than not, somebody else's computer still needs to be managed. it still needs to be secured. If you're using Microsoft's Office 365 and if you read the user requirements or the small print terms and conditions, they tell you that you are responsible for backing up your own data, and that if any data is, you should expect that some data, some percentage of it will go wrong. Same thing on Google when you look at their data storage agreements and usages. If your data is in the cloud, it needs to be maintained. You need to know how it is. You cannot simply move your data to the cloud and say, okay, I'm going to wipe my hands here. I'm done. Everything's going to be taken care of for me. It's just not true. You need professionals, whether they are your employees or somebody who's working on an hourly basis or somebody you contract with. Somebody has to be looking at your systems. And the final bullet under this is regulations and compliance. I will tell you, we deal with a lot of companies in different industries. We have financial clients who are subject to the FINRA regs. We have a lot of medical firms that are subject to HIPAA regs. A couple public companies that are subject to Sarbanes-Oxley or SOX. More often than not, they are looking in directions for things that are not necessarily everything. Case in point, a lot of the medical firms that we'll go into, they spend an inordinate amount of time looking at how they store their data in file cabinets, how far away their clients stand from the counter so they can't hear the previous patient describing things to the nurse. Those things are all well and good. But in the case of HIPAA, about 20% of that regulation is IT. And the technology has to be set up, configured, and secured in specific ways. It is very rare that we go into a medical firm and find that they're HIPAA compliant 100%. They may be compliant with the office arrangements and how the office conducts itself, but very rarely is the information systems set up in compliance. So myth number 3, we're secure, is dangerous, unless you've looked at it carefully. So what do you need? Well, minimally, and I really mean minimally, you need a team. And maybe this is one person and a backup person, but you can't rely on one individual only. In most businesses I run into, they've got one individual. But you need this team for failover, for 24/7 response, and emergency coverage, because when the stuff hits the fan, it's ugly. And if that one person you've got designated as doing this is in charge of it, you could be in a real world of hurt. I have another client where they try to manage all their IT themselves, and they bring us in when something's broken or really out of whack. The person who's managing the IT has a full-time job. He does not have time to be looking at this IT stuff. And when things have broken, he's totally overwhelmed. So is that a good model? Do we have an adequate team? Probably not. The second bullet here, the team should have varying skills and focus. It's because no one can know everything. I'm constantly asked by prospective clients for us, oh, will we get a dedicated person who will be our person? No, you won't. You'll get a main point of contact, but no one can know everything. And so I have people who are really good with the cloud, and people who are really good with security, and people who are really good with desktops and laptops, but no one person can know everything. And if you're expecting that one person to have all the skills and talents and education you need, you're setting yourself up for a big disappointment. That whoever your team is of the individuals, they need to adhere to best practices in the IT. There are specific recommendations and procedures and verifications and things that need to happen a specific way, because those are the best practices, and they avoid problems and they avoid big costs. One of the biggest problems is when I go into sites and they're not following these best IT practices. And as a result, things get messy. And I think I've already beaten the horse of document everything to death, because you need to document everything. We need to assume that whoever you've got doing your IT something could happen to them. Is there enough information in place that somebody else stepping in who's competent could use that documentation to get the job done? It's really, really important. Anyway, those are the minimal recommendations. Now, what needs to be managed and monitored? Well, I like to say everything, but I'll run through these items as if this is a clock, and in the 1 o'clock position, the first item I'm going to talk about is update, patch, and maintain your systems. It is critically important that patches and updates released by manufacturers are applied in a timely basis. These manufacturers become aware of errors in systems, or worse yet, vulnerabilities in the systems that hackers are trying to exploit, and you need to get these patches deployed consistently, quickly, and that's very important. Number 2, you want to encrypt the data and the devices. We prefer to encrypt the hard drive in any desktop and laptop, and make sure that that data is encrypted at rest, so that if somebody else got access to that computer, even if they didn't have the credentials and they decided to break open the computer and take out the hard drive, they still couldn't do anything with the hard drive because it's encrypted. We also believe in securing the data in transit, so that when especially if you're outside the office or you're working remotely, that the connection from you to whatever you're connecting to, the data is going through an encrypted tunnel to make sure that it's protected. You want to be using current technology, and this is more important than most people believe. The longer anything has been around, the more the vulnerabilities in that system are identified, usually by the bad guys. Also, the older anything gets, the more unreliable it gets. Typically, our rule is laptops should be replaced ideally within 3 years, desktops within 5, and servers within 8. A lot of people scratch their head when I say servers within 8 years. I'll tell you why. I don't want to be responsible for maintaining anything for a client that isn't under warranty, under a support plan. No server manufacturers will warrant servers beyond 8 years. As a result, usually around year 5 with any client, we start warning them it's time to budget for the replacement of this server before we get to the 8-year mark. We don't want to have the risk that if this server goes down, we would not be able to get a part quickly and get you back up and running. Again, we're always looking several moves ahead. Think of chess. We want to be thinking, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead, not just at the one you're making now. So current technology is important. Also current software. Again, the older the software, the more vulnerabilities are known widely, and then the bad guys can do that. It's just not worth to gamble with that stuff, and we'll see people using really old versions of Adobe or old versions of other programs where the vulnerabilities are extremely well known to the hacker community, and those are exploits that they're going to try and take advantage of. We need to manage, monitor, and audit everything. I talk about visibility, but if you're not managing, monitoring, and auditing, you don't really know what's going on with your environment. It's critically important. And whoever's taking care of your environment needs to commit to doing that. We need to reduce data access. I do not believe that everybody needs access to everything. Yet, most companies we go into will find folders on the server or wherever they are in the cloud, and everybody's got access to everything. I'm sorry, the guys on the machine floor do not need access to seeing everybody's HR documents, nor do the salespeople need to see the financial solvency of the company in the accounting folders. So we like to reduce data access to just what is most necessary, and then it's actually manageable. If everybody is accessing the same things, it's really hard to pinpoint who did what. Relatedly, that takes us to secure passwords. Secure passwords are very important. One of the biggest problems we see consistently is that because the company people work at is insisting on a specific username and password, employees very often use that same username and password for their personal stuff. They'll use it on their Facebook and their LinkedIn and Instagram and these other sites. One of the ways that hackers are able to so successfully hack companies is because people are using the same credentials everywhere. They will access those credentials somewhere that they successfully hacked, and now they've got a list of credentials, and they just have automated programs start scanning computer systems to see what they can access. And your people need to be trained and educated that they can't do that. Passwords should be unique to a specific site or program. Everyone should be different. Everyone should be complex. And it should not be a basic word like password or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yet we see it again and again. The reason you see so many companies in the news being hacked is because people are not being educated. And these basic 8 principles of managing the IT are not being followed. By the way, the reminder is if you have questions, put them in the question box. Okay, security is about managing risk through layers. One of the analogies I like to share a lot is bulletproof glass. Bulletproof glass, well, before we get to bulletproof glass, we'll talk about regular glass. Why does a bullet go through regular glass? Well, it's a single pane of glass, and a bullet can shatter it and penetrate it. Bulletproof glass, on the other hand, is multiple layers of glass and a polycarbonate between those. These layers absorb the momentum of the bullet and spread it out across the material so that it hopefully doesn't penetrate. In IT, when we're talking about security being managed through layers, what we're talking about is not relying on just one thing to protect us because we'll be set up for failure. The first thing we like to do is email security. That means any email coming into the company is filtered. This filtering usually happens in the cloud before the email even gets to the company. That's a good first step. Number 2, we want to make sure antivirus and anti-malware are in place. When I use the word here, I should change this. Endpoint antivirus. An endpoint is any desktop, laptop, server. It's the device that we're talking about. It's not the cables and things like that. But every device should have antivirus, anti-malware. We've already talked about patch management. We need to make sure these patches and updates are applied. Sometimes these are firmware that need to be upgraded to the software on motherboards or system boards. Very rarely does that ever happen, but patches and updates are crucial. Traditionally, if you're at a company location, that company is going to have a firewall guarding the perimeter. And that's really, really important. Again, they have to be the right firewall set up correctly and managed. Also, traditionally, that was a lot more difficult to do for off-network or roaming individuals who are working remotely. I'm happy to say that that's changing rapidly. And whoops, hit too many buttons. We expect to have some virtual cloud-based firewalls that we'll be offering clients soon, so that no matter where a person is, if they're connecting through the internet, they'll be behind that company firewall. This orange one, DNS Network Layer Security, is a fancy name for a product we use called Cloud Shield. Basically, the DNS is the domain name system. Anytime you want to go to a website, you're actually checking against a big phone book in the internet or cloud, and it translates the name that you want to go to, like Google, into a string of numbers, which is the address of where Google is. This happens very quickly. When you're running something like a DNS security service, what it's doing is checking the reputation of the site you want to go to before you go to it, and denying access if it's a known bad site. Similarly, if something's trying to connect to you from the internet, we can check the reputation of where that connection's coming from and deny it if it's a known bad site. I absolutely love this new layer of security. And I think it's one of the reasons we haven't had many ransomware attacks at all, certainly not beyond a machine or two, because we had this extra layer there guarding those machines. And finally, but probably the most important on the list, is the training, the policy, the response plan. Your employees need to be trained. They need to know what they should and shouldn't do. What are the acceptable uses of the computers? What are they allowed to run on them? Can I run anything I want or not? What are the company policies and procedures around computer usage? Those should be published. I think as new employees come in, that should be part of the employee handbook that they have to sign acknowledgement of. And then what's the expected response plan if things go really bad? Companies have to have this in place. So you might notice through all these different slides I've been sharing, we're talking about a lot more than just plugging in a keyboard or loading a piece of software. Proper IT is a multifaceted thing. It's not easy, it's complex, and it's for professionals. The only advertising slide I'm going to give you here is what are the 3 ways that we help our clients. So we have 3 distinct offerings to our clients, or I like to call them boxes of offerings. The first one, the blue box, is what we call worry-free IT. And that's for businesses basically of 10 to 100 employees. We offer fixed fee, all you can eat, proactive preventative IT management. We're going to do your maintenance, remote support for your people, any help desk support, and on-site support. We do it all. And you can buy different packages. One size rarely fits all. But for companies that want us to do everything IT for them, it's the worry-free IT. The green box pertains to businesses that already have IT people. Those people are usually very, very busy and not necessarily getting to everything they should. For those businesses, typically businesses of 100 to 1,000 employees, we offer them Tech Assist. And our Tech Assist services are typically a la carte, and they can buy just a couple things off the rack that they'd like. For example, we'd like you to manage our security. We'd like you to manage our backups, or manage our phone systems, or manage our cloud. But I think you get the idea. We're going to ensure that IT is done right in that specific area to back up those existing IT people. And when we end up being Tech Assist for a company, we're really working for those IT people in coordinates. The final category is the purple category. And that can be for businesses of any size. They may or may not have IT. Maybe they want to hire us to come in and give them a second opinion audit. Maybe they want us to come in and put in a business continuity solution, or design a network or security solution or backup solution, or just check their regulatory compliance. Very often those things are all done under audits and assessments. Maybe it leads to design work, maybe it doesn't, but it tends to be very transitory. We come in, do the work, and then leave. There is usually not an ongoing engagement in those, but those typically to be businesses of any size, or maybe a company that's either being bought or sold, and they want us to come in and look at those things. So those are usually audits and assessments. Anyway, now, one of the cool things about having gone through this webinar, if you registered for this webinar, you'll be receiving a link to download my free ebook of 10 benefits for adopting managed IT services, and I hope you like it. As a result of sitting through all this presentation, you're also going to get an opportunity for a once-in-a-lifetime offer. Okay, I'm being a little campy there, but a free one-on-one consultation with me. It's a 30-minute consultation. My goal is to discuss with you your IT challenges, help you overcome your obstacles, devise a strategic plan. I like this webinar, where I wanted it to be of immense value. I really try to make these 30-minute consultations be of great value to the person, and all roads do not lead to Sagazent Technology. If I can give you advice and clarify things, that's great. I don't offer these lightly because my time is valuable, but because you signed up and attended this webinar, you're welcome. I would ask that you jot down in the bottom here, the address to register for the consultation. But don't worry if you don't jot it down, because all attendees here will be getting an email with that link in the email. At this point, I'm going to open up things to Q&A. So let's flip to the app here that has the questions, and I'll scroll around. Here's a question. I had a lot of trouble with IT guys in the past. If you're not able to figure out my IT issues, what do you do to help your clients? Well, I know a lot of people in the industry. So in all humility, there are very few IT issues I and my company are not able to figure out. Um, but nobody knows everything. That certainly includes myself and my team. We occasionally, although it's rare, have to sub jobs to other individuals or do things that are not of our talent. We just got an opportunity the other day to do some forensic work for a legal firm. They wanted us to do some data recovery, and it was going to absolutely necessitate the person who did the work sitting in court in front of a judge and being cross-examined. At my company, we don't mind doing light forensic work and recovery, but we really don't like court time. It's not fun. And so I turned that job down. But most IT people who are competent, if they can't figure it out, they're going to turn to somebody who is competent. And if they have nowhere to send you to help you out on that, I would question their competency. Let's see if I have any other questions. I only see the one. Okay, how about some more questions, folks? Okay, so, oh, I see Barbara Hartman's online. Hey, Barbara. Let's see what else we have. I'm afraid about handling credit cards on my site, and I'm going to assume they mean website. What are your thoughts about e-commerce security, and do you address this with any of your programs? I think that credit cards are really, really risky these days, and that there are services that can handle the processing of credit cards for you so that you transfer the risk of that to them. I think it's well worth the service. Sagacent does not process credit cards on our website, but if I was a different kind of business and I was selling things on my website, I would not have my web people program that into my website. I would have my website link to a service that would process it, that is reputable and known to be good, so that I don't have to have that responsibility. It is way too easy for the hackers to attack that kind of stuff today. And so I just wouldn't want it to be on your website. It's okay if your website links to another site, but I don't think it's worth it. Here's another question. Do you work with companies who are not local to you? Actually, yes, we do. Most of our companies or clients are within like a 35, 40 mile radius of our office here in San Jose. The reason for that is that most of our clients want us to come on site, and beyond a certain range, that's just impractical. That being said, I have a whole bunch of servers we're managing for one client in Nanjing, China, and another group of servers that we're managing for another client in Belgium. It depends on what you want done. Increasingly, we have people who want us in other parts of the country to build them a solution for their backups or their security. We'll build the solution here, ship it out. We'll arrange for somebody to plug it in there. And then ongoing from then on, we're managing things remotely. It is very easy for us to be the second opinion people on existing systems, but if we're going to manage the environment from soup to nuts, then, and it's not local, then we probably have to have somebody local who we can call upon to be our feet and hands should something be needed on site. I will tell you in all honesty, it's funny, here we are in the middle of our 19th year, and when I started this company, almost everything back in 2000 had to be done on site. Maybe 4% of our tickets were done remotely. Today, it's completely flopped. About 95, 96% of all support activities we do are accomplished remotely, and only 5 or 4% are done on site. Actually, that's becoming a bit of a problem. I think our customers need to see us a bit more so that they feel comfortable with that. But yeah, we can help companies who are not local, but it depends on the needs, and I'm not shy about saying that we're not a good fit for certain kinds of requests. And do I see any other questions? I don't. Okay. Well, you are certainly welcome to sign up for the consultation and save your questions for that time. And I greatly appreciate you joining me today. I hope that this webinar was a good use of your time. Thank you very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.